my dear students, students of literature. 314 E by A. That's American literature. You all know that. And you've been looking at poets, you've been looking at short stories. So shall we take another short story today? The short story is called Tell-Tale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Have you heard of Edgar Allan Poe and his gothic stories, short stories? Edgar Allan Poe was actually a poet, a short story writer, a critic, an editor of literary journals. Interestingly, Edgar Allan Poe is one of those American writers who happened to be more popular in England than he was in the US during his own lifetime. Let me give you his dates. Edgar Allan Poe was born in 1809 and he died in 1849, quite young. Various reasons are attributed to his death, about which I'm not going to talk because we are more interested in his writings. Interestingly, he's also one of those very few writers who managed to earn a living through his writings. You know what that means? That he didn't do any other job. Usually, we know that most writers, most artists also have some other job to pay for their bread and butter. But Edgar Allan Poe didn't do that. When we look at his short stories, most of them are written are what are called the gothic style. The gothic short story, or even a novel, is usually one of horror. So in most of Poe's short stories, in many of his short stories, you will see themes like death, burial. Burial after death is all right, but pre-death burial, can you imagine how much of horror would be there when you read about something like that. He is also considered to be the inventor of what we today call the detective novel. There's a little bit of the science fiction also in some of his writings. Some of you might remember a story called The Black Cat, which you might have read or studied in an earlier class, earlier years, maybe. But today, the story that we are going to be looking at is called The Tell-Tale Heart, T-A-L-E, right? The Tell-Tale Heart. This story is, of course, very much in the Gothic style and has only one character, the narrator. Right? There's only one character. There are other minor characters, but mainly there is only one character, the one who's telling us the story. The story begins, let me read that first few lines for you. True, nervous, very dreadfully nervous. I had been, and I still am. This is how the story begins. And why will you say that I'm mad? I have sharpened my senses, he says. And he goes on to questioning why the listener or the reader is calling him mad. I'm not mad, he says. I'm narrating a story. And I'm narrating it very, very clearly. Yes, it's a horrible story. It's a frightening story. It's talking about things which are not very pleasant. True. And because of that, I'm nervous. But why do you insist on calling me mad? I want to take full responsibility for my actions. That's how the story begins. Let's continue to look at the story and see what happens. So, having insisted that he's not mad, he continues with his story. And what is the story that he's narrating? He has committed a murder, and he's describing to us how he went about planning the murder. So what did he do? He says, I thought about it in great detail. Was I angry with him? Was there any hatred? Why did I want to murder him? No, none of these. But yet, I decided to commit the murder. So what did I do? Day 1, day 2, every day I went in to see what the habit, what the timetable, what the schedule was of that man. Okay? So I did that for 7 days in a row. Understand, he says, how well I'd planned it. I am planning it. I'm in my senses. I'm not mad. He wants to reiterate the fact that he knows exactly what he's doing. So on the 8th night, he enters the bedroom of that old man. It doesn't happen very easily. The old man wakes up. He gets a fright. But our dear narrator waits. He hears a sound. It goes on, thump, thump, thump. And what is the sound? The sound is the heartbeat of the old man. He waits for some more time till he's sure that the old man is now fast asleep. And then he murders him. But having murdered him with a dead body on your hands, what do? He says he thought about it very calmly. After all, he's in his senses. He's not mad. So he thinks about it very, very calmly. And then he removes a few planks. You know, in many parts of the world, Europe, the US, Canada, etc., the floor is made of wood. So the wooden planks. So he removes the planks, 3 or 4 of them, enough for him to put the body in there, almost bury the body, you can say, under the floor, under the planks of the floor. He puts the planks back in place, but there's a knocking at the door. And who has arrived? It's the police who have arrived. And how did the police reach there? Because some of the neighbors had called up the police because they said that they heard the old man shriek. You know, shriek. A loud noise. So what happens now? Here we have a narrator, the murderer, the corpse, the dead body under the planks, and the police there. But the narrator is very calm and composed. He answers all the questions of the police without batting an eyelid, without being nervous, quite in control of himself. When suddenly, my dear students, what happens? From beneath the planks, he hears the same thump, 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 the sound of the heartbeat of the dead man. In shock, totally unprepared for this, he just blurts out that he had committed the murder. So can I read the last few lines for you, my dear students? How does the story end? Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks here, 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 here. It is the beating of the hideous heart. So try as you might, you are not able to cover up your crime. That's how the story ends, as do many other Gothic stories of Edgar Allan Poe. Short questions, short notes, my dear students. Do look into the website, look at our sample papers. Of course, the most important short note would be justify the title, The Telltale Heart, the heart which gives away the crime, which tells the story. So, all the best. Enjoy reading another short story which is a part of your paper on American literature. Thank you, my dear students.